He was wearing a $50 hoodie and carrying a backpack that looked like it had seen a war zone. When Raymond Carter walked into the most exclusive VIP lounge at JFK Airport, the staff didn't see the man who had just quietly signed a $6 billion merger. They only saw a target. Sylvia Whitmore, the lounge manager, didn't just deny him entry. She shredded his ticket, called the police, and humiliated him in front of 50 wealthy onlookers. She thought she was protecting the brand. She didn't realize she was about to fire her own boss. This is the story of how arrogance cost an entire staff their careers in less than 20 minutes. Buckle up. The air inside the Sovereign Lounge at JFK Terminal 4 didn't smell like an airport. It didn't smell like jet fuel, stale pretzels, or the nervous sweat of 1,000 people rushing to gate B32. It smelled of white tea, Italian leather, and a very specific, quiet kind of money. Sylvia Whitmore adjusted the lapel of her navy blue blazer, her fingers brushing the gold pin that read Lounge Director. She stood behind the polished obsidian podium like a sentry at the gates of heaven. Sylvia loved this job. She loved the power of it. She loved that for 8 hours a day, she was the arbiter of who belonged and who didn't. She wasn't rich herself. She took the subway from Queens and lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet, but inside the Sovereign, she was the queen. "Mr. Kensington," she purred, flashing a practiced porcelain smile at the elderly man approaching the desk. "Your usual scotch is waiting at the bar. Seat 4A has been reserved for you." "Thank you, Sylvia," the man grunted, adjusting his Patek Philippe watch. "Keep the riffraff out today, will you? The terminal is a zoo." "Always, Mr. Kensington," she replied, her eyes sharp. As Kensington waddled past the velvet rope, Sylvia's gaze shifted to the automatic glass doors. They slid open, and her smile instantly evaporated. It was replaced by a look of clinical distaste, the kind one might give to a cockroach found in a salad. The man walking in didn't fit. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and black. He was wearing a charcoal gray hoodie that was slightly frayed at the cuffs, loose-fitting joggers, and beaten-up basketball sneakers. He had a black backpack slung over one shoulder and oversized headphones around his neck. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red-rimmed, his beard was unshaven, and he walked with a slow, heavy gait. Sylvia stepped out from behind the podium before he even reached the mat. She moved with the speed of a predator spotting wounded prey. "Excuse me," Sylvia said, her voice raising an octave, loud enough to cut through the ambient jazz. "Sir, the restrooms are out in the main concourse." The man, Raymond Carter, stopped. He pulled his headphones down. "I'm not looking for the restroom." His voice was deep, raspy, and polite, checking in for the flight to London. Sylvia let out a short, incredulous huff. She crossed her arms, blocking the narrow entrance between the podium and the wall. "This is the Sovereign Lounge, sir. It is for first class and Diamond Medallion members only. The economy waiting area is by gate 12. You need to turn around." Raymond sighed, rubbing his temples. He had been awake for 36 hours straight. The negotiations in San Francisco had run long, the red-eye flight to New York had been turbulent, and he had a board meeting in London in 7 hours. He didn't have the energy for this. "I know where I am," Raymond said, reaching into his pocket. "I have a ticket." "I'm sure you have a ticket," Sylvia said, her voice dripping with condescension. She glanced around to see if the other staff members were watching. Todd, the bartender, and Jessica, the concierge, were looking on with amused smirks. This was the afternoon entertainment. "But you don't have a ticket for here. Please leave before I call security. We have a strict dress code." Raymond paused. He looked down at his hoodie, then back at Sylvia. "Your website says the dress code is smart, casual, or comfort luxury for overnight flights. I'm comfortable." "Comfort luxury implies luxury," Sylvia snapped. "Not gym laundry day. You are disturbing our guests." Behind Raymond, a young couple in designer trench coats was waiting, looking annoyed. The man tapped his foot. "Come on, buddy. Move it along," he muttered. Raymond ignored him. He pulled a folded piece of cardstock from his pocket. It wasn't a standard boarding pass. It was thick, matte black with gold foil lettering. "Here," Raymond said, offering it to her. Sylvia didn't take it. She looked at the black card with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. She had seen first-class tickets. She had seen Diamond Medallion passes. They were silver or gold. She had never seen a black card. "What is this?" she asked, not touching it. It's my boarding pass, Raymond said. Sylvia snatched it from his hand. She held it up to the light, squinting. It had a QR code, a flight number, and a name, R. Carter. But there was no airline logo, no barcode she recognized. Just a small, embossed emblem of a falcon in the corner. This is fake, she announced loudly. The lounge went silent. The clinking of glasses stopped. Mr. Kensington turned around in his leather armchair. Excuse me? Raymond said, his brow furrowing. I said it's fake, Sylvia repeated, her voice projecting triumph. I've worked for Skyline Airways for 12 years. We don't issue black tickets. You printed this off some scam website, didn't you? Or did you make it yourself? Scan it, Raymond said, his voice dropping, becoming dangerously calm. Just scan the code, ma'am. I will not scan it, Sylvia said, tossing the heavy card onto the counter with a clatter. I am not going to infect my system with whatever malware is linked to that QR code. You are trying to scam your way into free drinks and a shower. It's pathetic. Ma'am, Raymond said, stepping forward. I am asking you once, scan the ticket or call your supervisor. I am the supervisor, Sylvia hissed, stepping into his personal space. She was running on adrenaline now. She felt righteous. She was protecting her domain from a fraudster. And you are trespassing. She turned to Jessica, the concierge. Jessica, call airport police. Tell them we have a disturbed individual with a forged document refusing to leave the premises. Jessica picked up the phone, a wicked grin on her face. Raymond looked at the phone, then back at Sylvia. He didn't yell, he didn't make a scene. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out his own phone. You're making a mistake, Raymond said softly. The only mistake, Sylvia sneered, was thinking you could walk in here looking like a vagrant and fool me. The atmosphere in the Sovereign Lounge shifted from awkward to hostile in seconds. The clientele, emboldened by Sylvia's confidence, began to participate. It was a mob mentality wrapped in silk and cashmere. Just get out, man, the guy in the trench coat behind Raymond shouted. We have flights to catch. Probably stole the backpack, too. A woman whispered loudly near the buffet, sipping her mimosa. Raymond stood his ground, his thumb hovering over his phone screen. He began to dial a number. Put the phone away, Sylvia barked. She signaled to Todd, the bartender, a burly man who fancied himself a bouncer. Todd came out from behind the bar, wiping his hands on a rag, flexing his forearms. Is there a problem here, boss? Todd asked, glaring at Raymond. Mr. Carter here thinks he can forge airline documents, Sylvia said, crossing her arms. He's refusing to leave. Todd stepped up, towering over Raymond. Time to go, pal. Don't make me drag you out. Raymond looked at Todd. Touch me, and you'll be facing an assault charge on top of the lawsuit. Todd hesitated. There was something in Raymond's eyes, a cold, absolute certainty that made the bartender pause. It wasn't the look of a desperate scammer. It was the look of a man who knew exactly where the landmines were buried. Just then, the glass doors whooshed open. Two airport police officers, Officer Brady and Officer Miller, walked in, hands resting on their belts. What's the situation? Officer Brady asked, his eyes scanning the room. He was an older man, tired, looking forward to retirement. Sylvia immediately switched into her victim persona. Her posture slumped slightly, her voice became shaky. Officer, thank God. This man, she pointed a manicured finger at Raymond, is trying to force his way into the VIP lounge with a fake ticket. He's been aggressive with my staff and refuses to leave. Officer Brady looked at Raymond. That true, sir? I have a valid ticket, Raymond said calmly. She refused to scan it. It's a forgery, Sylvia interrupted, grabbing the black card from the counter and shoving it at the officer. Look at it. No airline branding. No standard serial number. He probably printed it on his home computer. It's fraud. Officer Brady took the card. He turned it over in his hands. It felt heavy, expensive. It felt like metal wrapped in paper. He looked at Raymond. Sir, do you have ID? I do, Raymond said. He slowly reached for his wallet. Watch his hands, Todd shouted unnecessarily. Raymond pulled out his passport and handed it to the officer. Brady opened it. American passport. Valid. He looked at the name. Raymond Elijah Carter. Mr. Carter, Brady said. This ticket, it is unusual. I've worked at JFK for 20 years. Haven't seen one like this. Where did you get it? It was issued to me this morning, Raymond said. By the board of directors. A ripple of laughter went through the lounge. Sylvia let out a loud, mocking cackle. The board of directors? Did you hear that? He thinks the board personally gave him a ticket. Did they give it to you at the shelter? The rich couple behind Raymond laughed openly. Someone in the back shouted, "He's hallucinating." "Sir," Officer Brady said, his patience wearing thin, "if you don't have a valid boarding pass, you can't be airside. You definitely can't be in this lounge. I'm going to have to ask you to come with us." "I am not going anywhere until my ticket is verified," Raymond said, his voice hard as stone. "I have a meeting in London. If I miss this flight because of her incompetence, this airline is going to bleed money." "Threatening the airline now?" Sylvia said, shaking her head. "Officer, get him out of here. He's disturbing Mr. Kensington." Officer Miller, the younger cop, stepped forward. "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You're being detained for trespassing and potential fraud." "Wait," Raymond said. "Check the passenger manifest. Just call the gate." "We checked the system," Sylvia lied. "He's not on it. Carter doesn't exist on flight 404. She hadn't checked the system. She hadn't even looked at the computer. She was so sure of her bias that she didn't feel the need to verify facts. Officer Miller grabbed Raymond's wrist. Raymond didn't resist physically, but he spoke loudly, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Sylvia Whitmore, you have made a career-ending mistake today. I gave you 3 chances to do your job. Now, I'm going to do mine." "Cuff him," Sylvia spat. As the handcuffs clicked around Raymond's wrists, the sound echoed in the silent lounge. A few people pulled out their phones to record the crazy guy getting arrested. Sylvia smoothed her skirt, a look of smug satisfaction on her face. She had won. She had protected the sanctuary. As they began to march Raymond toward the door, the black ticket still in Officer Brady's hand, the landline on the obsidian podium began to ring. It wasn't the normal ringtone. It was a shrill, continuous emergency tone that Sylvia had only heard once during a drill. It was the red phone, the direct line from the tower and the executive offices. Sylvia froze. Raymond stopped walking. He looked back over his shoulder at Sylvia, a small, sad smile on his face. "I think you should answer that," Raymond said. "It's probably for you." Sylvia hesitated. The phone kept screaming. "Answer it," Officer Brady said, frowning. Sylvia picked up the receiver, her hand trembling slightly. "Sovereign Lounge," Sylvia speaking. The voice on the other end was deafeningly loud. It was Mr. Benedict, the CEO of Skyline Airways. He wasn't speaking. He was roaring. "Whitmore, do you have a passenger named Raymond Carter in your lounge?" Sylvia's stomach dropped through the floor. Yes, sir." "Mr. Benedict?" "Yes, we're handling it. He had a fake ticket, the police are." "Fake ticket?" Benedict screamed so loud that Officer Brady could hear it from 3 feet away. "You idiot. That is the Onyx prototype. Carter isn't a passenger. He bought the airline." Sylvia's legs gave out. She gripped the podium to stop herself from collapsing. The blood drained from her face so fast, she looked like a ghost. "He signed the acquisition papers 3 hours ago," Benedict continued, his voice shaking with rage. "He owns Skyline. He owns the lounge. He owns the chair you are sitting in. Put him on the phone. Now." Sylvia looked up. The room was spinning. She looked at the police officers. She looked at the wealthy guests who were now lowering their phones, confused by her expression. Finally, she looked at Raymond Carter. He was standing there, handcuffed, wearing a hoodie, looking like the king of the world. He wants to talk to you," Sylvia whispered, holding the phone out with a shaking hand. Raymond didn't move toward the phone. He just raised his eyebrows. "I can't take the call, Sylvia," Raymond said calmly. "I'm in handcuffs." The receiver clattered against the obsidian podium, then fell to the marble floor with a deafening crack. Sylvia didn't drop it on purpose. Her hands had simply ceased to function. Mr. Benedict's voice was still emanating from the earpiece on the floor, tinny and furious. "Do you hear me, Whitmore? Unhand him. Apologize. I am on my way down there. And God help you if he is still in cuffs when I arrive." The silence that fell over the Sovereign Lounge was heavier than granite. It sucked the air out of the room. The smooth jazz seemed to stop mid-note. The clinking of expensive glassware ceased. 50 of the wealthiest people in Terminal 4 were frozen in a tableau of realized horror. Mr. Kensington, still halfway turned in his leather chair, looked as if he'd swallowed a lemon whole. The couple in the trench coats who had mocked Raymond were suddenly intensely interested in the pattern of the carpet. Officer Brady was the first to recover. He was an experienced cop, and he knew the sound of a career-ending tsunami when he heard one. He looked down at the black ticket. He was still holding the Onyx prototype. It suddenly felt radioactive. He looked at Sylvia, who was pale, trembling, and gasping for air like a fish on a dock. Then he looked at Raymond Carter. Raymond hadn't moved. He was still standing tall, his wrists bound behind his back, his expression one of terrifying tranquility. He was no longer the tired traveler in a hoodie. He was a statue of judgment. "Oh my God," Officer Brady whispered. He moved with panic speed to Raymond's back. "Miller, key, now." Officer Miller fumbled with his belt, his hands shaking almost as badly as Sylvia's. He retrieved the key and unlocked the cuffs. The metal ratchets sounded like gunshots in the quiet room. As the cuffs fell away, Raymond rubbed his wrists slowly. He didn't thank the officers. He didn't look at them. He walked slowly toward the podium, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. He bent down and picked up the phone receiver. He dusted it off gently. Sylvia watched him approach as if he were the Grim Reaper. She couldn't move. Her career, her identity, her sense of superiority, it was all dissolving in real time. Raymond put the phone to his ear. "Benedict, I'm here." He listened for a moment. A thin smile touched his lips. "No, Arthur. Don't come down here. Stay in the tower. I'll handle this. We have a board meeting in London, remember? We need to leave on time." He paused again, listening to the frantic apologies on the other end. "Yes, the acquisition is finalized," Raymond said, his voice smooth, deep, and echoing through the lounge. He was speaking to Benedict, but he was addressing the room. "I own Skyline Airways now, which means this lounge." He looked around slowly, making eye contact with the people who had laughed at him. "Is my living room." He hung up the phone with a definitive click. Raymond placed both hands on the obsidian podium, leaning forward, occupying the space Sylvia had guarded so viciously. He looked at her. "Sylvia," Raymond said. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the crushing weight of authority. "I think you need a drink of water. You look like you're going to faint." Sylvia tried to speak. Her jaw worked, but no sound came out. She was hyperventilating. "Todd," Raymond said, turning his gaze to the burly bartender who had threatened to drag him out. Todd froze, the bar rag still in his hand. He looked terrified. "Yes. Yes, sir?" "Mr. Carter, sir? Get Miss Whitmore a glass of water. Tap is fine." "And Jessica," he looked at the concierge who had gleefully called the police. Jessica whimpered. "Close the lounge doors," Raymond ordered. "Lock them. No one enters. No one leaves. The flight to London is delayed until I say otherwise." He turned to the two police officers, who were standing awkwardly by the entrance, wishing they could teleport anywhere else on the planet. "Officers, I appreciate your swift response to what you were told was a threat," Raymond said, his tone diplomatic but icy. "However, you were weaponized by my staff against their employer. I'd like you to remain as witnesses to an internal corporate investigation. It won't take long." Officer Brady nodded quickly. "Of course, Mr. Carter. Anything you need." Raymond turned back to the room. The wealthy passengers were shifting uncomfortably. They were used to being the most important people in any room. Now, they were captive audience members in a disaster movie. "Ladies and gentlemen," Raymond announced, "my apologies for the disruption. The bar is open. Everything is complimentary, of course. Please, enjoy the show." He then turned his back on them. His focus narrowed down to the three people behind the counter. The tribunal had begun. Raymond didn't shout. He didn't need to. The atmosphere in the lounge was so thick with tension that shouting would have been redundant. He just stood behind the podium, the new master of the domain, and let the silence stretch until it was agonizing. Sylvia had managed to drink half a glass of water, but her hands were shaking so badly she spilled most of it down her navy blazer. She looked small, defeated, and profoundly stupid. "Let's review the last 15 minutes, Raymond began, his voice conversational, which made it all the more terrifying. He tapped the black onyx card that was now resting on the podium. "This card. You said it was fake. You said I printed it off a scam website. Sylvia stared at her shoes. I didn't know, sir. It didn't look like. Look at me when you speak to me, Raymond said sharply. Sylvia jerked her head up, her eyes wide and rimmed with tears. It didn't look like a normal ticket, she whispered. No, it didn't, Raymond agreed. It's a prototype for our new Ultra VIP tier. It's made of anodized titanium. It costs $400 just to manufacture one card. You held it in your hand. Did it feel like paper you print at home? Sylvia swallowed hard. It felt heavy. But you didn't care, Raymond cut in. Because you had already made up your mind before you even touched it. Tell me, Sylvia, what was the very first thing you said to me when I walked in? Sylvia stammered. I don't remember exactly. I think I asked for your ticket. Liar, Raymond said softly. The word hung in the air. He turned to the officers. Officer Brady, your body camera is rolling, correct? Yes, sir, since we entered. Good. Replay the tape later. Sylvia, your first words to me were, the restrooms are out in the main concourse. You didn't ask for a ticket. You didn't greet me. You looked at me and decided I was here to use a toilet I wasn't authorized for. He stepped out from behind the podium and walked slowly around it, encroaching on her space. Why was that your first assumption, Sylvia? She said nothing. Tears were now streaming down her face, ruining her immaculate makeup. Was it the hoodie? Raymond asked, touching his sleeve. It's comfortable. I like it. Does wearing cotton invalidate my bank account? No, sir, she whispered. Was it the backpack? He nudged it with his foot. It's got my laptop in it. And the contracts for a $6 billion merger. It's a valuable bag. He leaned in closer. Or was it something else? Tell me. I really want to know the thought process of the director of my flagship lounge. I was just trying to protect the lounge, sir, she sobbed. We get people trying to sneak in. I thought, you just didn't fit the profile. The profile, Raymond repeated, savoring the word like spoiled milk. He looked out at the lounge. At Mr. Kensington sipping his scotch nervously. Like Mr. Kensington here? Old white, wearing a suit? That's the profile? Sylvia didn't answer. She didn't have to. Raymond turned to Jessica. The young concierge jumped as if she'd been tasered. And you, Raymond said, you thought it was funny. I saw you smirking. When she told you to call the police, you didn't hesitate. You didn't suggest maybe scanning the ticket first. You just grabbed that phone. Why? Jessica trembled. Sylvia is my boss. I just did what she told me. Ah, the just following orders defense, Raymond nodded. A classic. You didn't use your brain. You didn't use your eyes. You just joined the mob. He finally turned to Todd, the bartender. Todd was twice Raymond's size, but he currently looked about 2 inches tall. And the muscle, Raymond said dryly. You were ready to put your hands on me. Don't make me drag you out, I believe you said. Tell me, Todd, if I had resisted, were you going to tackle me in front of the mimosa bar? I was just backing up Sylvia, sir. I thought you were a threat, Todd mumbled, looking at the floor. A threat. Raymond laughed, a harsh, barking sound. I was the least threatening person in this room. The most threatening person was her. He pointed at Sylvia. Raymond walked back to the podium. He picked up the black ticket again. You know the irony, Sylvia? Mr. Benedict gave me this card as a test run. He wanted to see if the scanners were updated to read the new encryption. All you had to do, the only thing you had to do to avoid total disaster was your job. Scan the ticket. He held it up. If you had scanned it, your screen would have turned bright gold. It would have flashed owner, priority alpha. It would have told you that I was the most important person to ever walk through those doors. He dropped the card onto the counter. It made a heavy metallic thud. But your bias was stronger than your training. Your prejudice was louder than your professionalism. You didn't see a customer. You saw a stereotype. Sylvia was openly weeping now, her face buried in her hands. Please, Mr. Carter. I've worked here for 12 years. This job is my life. Please give me another chance. I made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry. Raymond looked at her with zero sympathy. His eyes were cold fire. A mistake is forgetting to restock the napkins, Sylvia. Calling the police on the owner of the company because you don't like his face is not a mistake. It's a liability. He looked at his watch. My flight leaves in 40 minutes. We need to wrap this up. He looked at the 3 staff members, huddled together in their disgrace. You humiliated me, Raymond said. You weaponized the police against me. You tried to deny me travel on my own airline, and you did it with glee. He paused, letting the moment hang. You're all fired. Obviously, Sylvia let out a choke sob. But that's too easy, Raymond continued. Being fired is just paperwork. What you need is to understand what it feels like to be on the other side of that velvet rope. He turned to Officer Brady. Officer, I'd like to press charges. Sylvia's head snapped up. Charges? For what? Raymond smiled, but there was no humor in it. You made a fraudulent emergency call to the police, Sylvia. You wasted city resources by falsely reporting a trespasser. That's a crime. He looked at Todd. And you uttered threats of physical violence. That's assault. He looked back at Sylvia. And then there's the defamation. Slandering me in front of my high-value customers. Raymond leaned in close to Sylvia, his voice a low rumble. You wanted to use the law to hurt me, Sylvia. Now, the law is going to hurt you. Officer Brady, take them into custody. I want them removed from my terminal in handcuffs. Let them see how comfortable it is. The handcuffs that Officer Brady pulled from his belt seemed to glint with a cruel kind of irony under the lounge's recessed lighting. 10 minutes ago, these same cuffs had been destined for Raymond's wrists. Now, they were for the woman who had ordered them. Sylvia recoiled as the officer approached. She backed up until she hit the wall of wine bottles behind the bar. No, she gasped, her voice cracking. You can't. Mr. Carter, please. This is insane. You can't have me arrested for doing my job. You weren't doing your job, Sylvia, Raymond said, watching her with a detached curiosity. You were doing your prejudice. And you filed a false police report. That's not a job description. It's a misdemeanor. Officer Brady, looking visibly uncomfortable but bound by the law and the presence of the airline's owner, stepped behind the bar. Miss Whitmore, turn around. Hands behind your back. Mr. Kensington, Sylvia shrieked, looking desperately toward the elderly man in the leather chair. Help me. Tell him. Tell him how good I am. Tell him I've served you for years. Mr. Kensington, the man whose Scotch she had prepared perfectly for a decade, the man she thought was her ally in high society, slowly picked up his glass. He didn't look at her. He looked at the amber liquid, swirled it, and took a sip. I've never seen this woman before in my life, Kensington muttered to the room, turning his back on her. Sylvia's face crumpled. The illusion of her status shattered instantly. She wasn't one of them, she was just the help. And the help had become an inconvenience. The metal cuffs clicked shut around Sylvia's wrists. Then Todd's. Then Jessica's. This is ridiculous, Todd grumbled, though the fight had left him. He looked deflated, a playground bully who had finally picked on a heavyweight boxer. We're moving, Officer Brady announced. Wait, Raymond said. He walked over to the backpack that Sylvia had sneered at. He unzipped the front pocket and pulled out a fresh, crisp $100 bill. He walked over to Todd, whose hands were cuffed behind his back. Raymond tucked the bill into Todd's apron pocket. For the water, Raymond said. Keep the change. He then signaled to the officers. Take them out the front, through the main concourse. I want everyone to see. The procession was brutal. Officer Brady and Officer Miller led the 3 disgraced staff members out of the Sovereign Lounge and into the bright, chaotic lights of Terminal 4. Usually, Sylvia walked through this terminal with her nose in the air, judging the tourists in their sweatpants and the crying babies. Now, she was the spectacle. As they walked past the duty-free shops and the crowded gate areas, heads turned. The sight of 3 uniformed airline staff in handcuffs was like blood in the water for the airport crowd. Phones came out instantly. Flashes popped. Hey, isn't that the lady from the VIP lounge? Someone shouted. She wouldn't let me in last week because I had a stroller. Karma's a bee. Another passenger yelled. Sylvia kept her head down, tears dripping onto the linoleum floor, but she couldn't hide. The clicks of the camera shutters were like a firing squad. She saw a teenager live streaming the walk on TikTok, narrating, Yo, the Sovereign staff just got raided. They're getting hauled off. Crazy. By the time they reached the security checkpoint to be escorted out, Sylvia's reputation wasn't just ruined locally. It was being uploaded to the cloud, tagged, and shared globally. She had wanted to protect the brand's image. Instead, she had become the face of its ugliest failure. Back inside the lounge, the atmosphere had shifted from tension to a strange, nervous reverence. The passengers were terrified. They realized that if Raymond could decapitate his own staff in 10 minutes, he could certainly ban them from flying. Raymond walked back to the bar. It was empty now. He walked around to the service side, grabbed a clean glass, and poured himself a sparkling water. He turned to face the room. The couple in the trench coats, the ones who had told him to move it along, were trying to make themselves invisible behind a potted fern. Raymond walked over to them. The man, whose name was Greg, went pale. "Mr. Carter." "Sir, we didn't know." "You didn't know I was the owner," Raymond said, taking a sip of water. "That's true. But you knew I was a human being. That should have been enough." Greg swallowed. "We were just in a rush. Stress of travel, you know?" "I know stress," Raymond said. "I've been negotiating a merger for 3 days without sleep." "Stress doesn't make you a bigot, Greg. It just reveals who you already are." Raymond pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times. What are you doing?" Greg's girlfriend asked, her voice trembling. "I'm accessing the passenger manifest for the flight to London," Raymond said without looking up. "Seat 3A and 3B. Greg and Samantha Miller. Is that you?" "Yes," Greg said, sweating. "Not anymore," Raymond said. He tapped the screen one final time. "I've just refunded your tickets. In full. You're not flying Skyline today." "What?" Greg stood up, outraged. "You can't do that. We have reservations at the Dorchester." "You can fly," Raymond said calmly. "Just not with us. I hear Delta has a flight leaving in 3 hours. Economy is lovely this time of year." "This is unfair," Samantha cried. "Life is unfair," Raymond said, turning away. "My lounge is for people who understand respect. Please gather your things. Security will escort you out." As the couple sputtered and gathered their bags, shamed and furious, Raymond returned to the podium. He picked up the receiver of the red phone again. He had one more call to make. A call that would ensure Sylvia's bad day turned into a bad life. Raymond dialed the direct line to Human Resources at Skyline HQ. It was answered on the first ring by the VP of HR, a woman named Eleanor, who had likely been alerted by Benedict that the new boss was on the warpath. "Mr. Carter," Eleanor said, her voice tight. "We've heard reports of an incident. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Eleanor," Raymond said, leaning against the podium. "But we have 3 vacancies at JFK, Whitmore, Evans, and Higgins. They are currently in police custody. We will process their termination immediately," Eleanor said. "Standard protocol is 2 weeks severance and—" "No," Raymond interrupted. "No severance. Termination for cause, gross misconduct, discrimination, false reporting to authorities." "And Eleanor?" "Yes, sir. I want them blacklisted. Industry-wide." There was a pause on the line. The industry blacklist wasn't an official document, but it was a very real, very powerful understanding between the major airlines. If your name went on it, you didn't just lose your job at Skyline. You couldn't get hired to clean the toilets at Spirit Airlines. You were radioactive to anyone with an FAA license. "Sir," Eleanor hesitated, "that is an extreme measure. Usually reserved for safety violations or theft." "They stole my dignity, Eleanor," Raymond said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And they compromised the safety of every passenger in this room by bringing armed police into a secure environment based on a lie. If you don't think that warrants a blacklist, perhaps I need a new VP of HR too." "Understood, sir," Eleanor said quickly. "I will flag their files immediately. They won't work in aviation again." "Good. And one more thing," Raymond added. "I want the video footage from the lounge security cameras sent to my personal email and send a copy to the NYPD. I want to make sure the DA has everything they need for the prosecution." "It's done, Mr. Carter." Raymond hung up. He looked out the window at the tarmac, where the massive Boeing 777 was being prepped for the flight to London. His flight. The glass doors of the lounge opened again. This time, it wasn't the police. It was a man in a high-visibility vest, panting, looking terrified. It was the gate agent. "Mr. Carter," the agent gasped. We heard what happened. We are ready to board you immediately. We can hold the plane." "We can." "Relax," Raymond said, smiling for the first time. "The plane leaves on time. I'll board with everyone else." "When does Group 1 start?" In 5 minutes, sir." "Then I'll wait," Raymond said. He sat down in the leather chair previously occupied by the couple he had kicked out. He put his headphones back around his neck. As he sat there, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from Twitter. The video of Sylvia's arrest was trending. Airport Karen was the #1 hashtag in New York. Raymond clicked on the video. It showed Sylvia crying as she was led past a Sparrow pizza place. The comments were brutal. Asterisk. Wait, I know her. She was rude to my grandma last year. Asterisk. Laugh my ass off. Imagine calling the cops on the owner. Career suicide speedrun any %. Asterisk. Skyline Airways just went up in my book. Clean house. Raymond swiped the notification away. He didn't feel joy. He didn't feel sad. He felt balanced. The scales had tipped, and he had righted them. But the universe wasn't quite done with Sylvia Whitmore yet. 3 miles away, in the back of a police cruiser, Sylvia's phone, which was sitting in her pocket, not yet confiscated, buzzed. It was a text from her landlord. Sylvia, I saw the news. My niece sent me the video. I don't want trouble at my property. I'm not renewing your lease next month. You need to be out by the 1st. Sylvia couldn't read the text because her hands were cuffed behind her back. She just stared out the window at the gray tarmac, watching a skyline jet take off, knowing she would never set foot on one again. Back in the lounge, Raymond stood up. Boarding was starting. As he walked toward the door, the remaining passengers stood up. It wasn't planned, it was spontaneous. They stood up to let him pass. A silent parting of the sea. Mr. Kensington, the old regular, caught Raymond's eye. Mr. Carter, Kensington said, his voice respectful. Have a safe flight. Raymond paused. He looked at the old man who had turned his back on Sylvia. Mr. Kensington, Raymond said. I believe your membership expires next month? I believe so, yes. Don't bother renewing it, Raymond said, walking past him. We're rebranding. And we're looking for a different class of clientele. The kind that stands up for people, not just for scotch. He walked out the door, leaving Kensington stunned in the silence of the empty lounge. Raymond walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting his face. He stepped onto the plane. The flight attendants, who had definitely heard the news via the crew group chat, looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter, the purser said, her voice shaking. May I take your jacket? No need, Raymond said, pulling his hoodie tighter. I'm comfortable. He walked to seat 1A. He sat down, buckled his seatbelt, and closed his eyes. The engines roared to life. He had fired the staff. He had banned the rude passengers. He had blacklisted the director. He had reshaped the culture of his company in under an hour. But as the plane lifted off, banking over the skyline of New York, Raymond knew the real work was just beginning. He had torn down the old guard. Now, he had to build something better. And Sylvia? Sylvia was currently sitting in a holding cell at the Queen's precinct, waiting for a public defender, while the video of her downfall hit 10 million views. She thought she was the gatekeeper. She forgot that the gatekeeper is just a servant to the king. 6 months later, the winter wind whipped down Steinway Street in Queens, carrying the scent of exhaust fumes and frying grease. It was a far cry from the white tea and Italian leather of the Sovereign Lounge. Inside Burger Barn, a fluorescent-lit fast food joint that smelled permanently of old onions, Sylvia Whitmore was scrubbing a table. Her uniform was a garish orange polo shirt that was 2 sizes too big, and a paper hat sat crookedly on her head. Her nails, once manicured to perfection, were chipped and short. She wasn't Sylvia the lounge director anymore. She was just Sylvia, the new hire on the lunch shift. The hard karma Raymond Carter had promised hadn't just hit her. It had steamrolled her. The video of her arrest hadn't just gone viral. It had become a cultural touchstone. She was a meme. Late-night hosts had made jokes about her. A Halloween costume called the Lounge Lady had sold out in October. The blacklist was real. She had applied to every airline, every hotel, every upscale restaurant in the tri-state area. The moment they ran her name or recognized her face, the interview ended. The aviation industry was a small world, and Raymond Carter had effectively exiled her from it. Then came the legal fees. The assault charges were dropped eventually, but the filing a false report charge stuck. She had pleaded down to community service and probation, but her lawyer had cost her entire savings. Her landlord had followed through on the eviction threat. She was now living in a basement studio in Astoria that smelled of damp mold, a far cry from the life she thought she deserved. Hey, Table 4 needs wiping. Move it, the shift manager shouted. He was 19 years old, with acne scars and a power trip that rivaled Sylvia's old persona. I'm going, Kyle, Sylvia muttered, wringing out the gray rag. As she wiped the table, the TV mounted in the corner of the dining room caught her eye. It was tuned to a business news channel. The headline on the screen read, Skyline Airways posts record profits, rebrands luxury experience. Sylvia froze. On the screen was Raymond Carter. He looked impeccable in a tailored suit, but he wasn't wearing a tie. He looked relaxed, confident, and powerful. He was standing in front of the newly renovated lounge at JFK. The sign no longer said Sovereign. It said the Onyx Club. A reporter held a microphone to his face. Mr. Carter, your turnaround of Skyline has been nothing short of miraculous. You've changed the culture entirely. What was the turning point? Sylvia leaned in, clutching the dirty rag. On the screen, Raymond smiled. It started with a simple idea, he said, his deep voice cutting through the noise of the Burger Barn kitchen. That luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about service. We cleared out the toxicity. We stopped judging our passengers by their clothes and started judging them by their character. And we hired staff who understand that every human being deserves dignity. The camera panned to show the new staff. They were diverse, smiling, and genuinely welcoming. Among them, Sylvia recognized a young man she had once rejected from an interview because he had tattoos on his forearm. He was now wearing the gold pin of a manager. And what about the Onyx ticket? The reporter asked. The one that caused the controversy? Raymond held up the black metal card. This? It's now our scholarship pass. Every year, we give 50 of these to underfunded students and young entrepreneurs. It gives them free travel worldwide for a year to chase their dreams. Because you never know who is going to change the world. They might walk in wearing a hoodie. Sylvia felt a physical pain in her chest. A hollow, crushing weight of regret. She had held that card. She could have been part of this. She could have been the one standing next to him. Instead, she was wiping ketchup off a plastic table. Excuse me, a customer said, tapping the table she was cleaning. Sylvia jumped. She looked down. Sitting there was a young black man in a hoodie. He had headphones around his neck and a backpack on the floor. He looked eerily like Raymond had that day. Sylvia's heart hammered. For a second, she thought it was a hallucination. You missed a spot, the young man said kindly, pointing to a sticky soda ring. Sylvia looked at him. The old Sylvia would have rolled her eyes. The old Sylvia would have muttered something about him being messy. But the new Sylvia, the broken Sylvia, just nodded. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice trembling. I'll get it right now. She scrubbed the spot. She scrubbed it until the table gleamed. Thank you, the young man said. He looked at her name tag. Sylvia. He handed her a $5 bill. Keep the change. Sylvia stared at the money. It was more than she made in half an hour. Tears pricked her eyes. She looked up to thank him, but he had already put his headphones on, lost in his own world, flying somewhere she could no longer follow. She looked back at the TV. Raymond Carter was shaking hands with the reporter, looking like a king. Sylvia realized then that the prison she was in wasn't the Burger Barn, or the basement apartment, or the probation. The prison was the mindset she had carried for 12 years. She had built the walls herself, brick by brick, judgment by judgment. Raymond hadn't ruined her life. He had just turned on the lights. Whitmore, fries are up, Kyle shouted. Sylvia wiped her face with her sleeve. Coming, she said. She turned away from the TV, from the life she lost, and walked back toward the fryer. The heat was oppressive, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something like humility. It was a bitter pill, but she swallowed it. Outside, a Skyline jet roared overhead, climbing into the clouds, free and boundless. And that is how the story ends. Sylvia Whitmore learned the hardest lesson of all. When you try to act like a gatekeeper to keep others down, you usually end up locking yourself out. Raymond Carter didn't just buy an airline. He bought justice. He showed us that true power isn't about wearing a suit or standing behind a velvet rope. It's about how you treat the person who can do absolutely nothing for you. The world is full of Sylvias, people who mistake authority for superiority. But it's also full of Raymonds, people walking around in hoodies with billion-dollar dreams and the receipts to prove it. The next time you see someone who doesn't look the part, remember this story. Remember the Onyx card, because you never know who you're really talking to until you take the time to listen. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Or have you ever seen a Sylvia get what they deserved? I want to hear your stories. Drop a comment down below. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We have a crazy story coming next week about a landlord who tried to evict a tenant, only to find out the tenant owned the building. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, stay humble, and I'll see you in the next one.